Hey, good day. This is Greg Lewis, City Manager of the City of Lebanon. Welcome to our Lebanon In-Depth show today. We're going to have two segments today. In the first segment, I'm going to cover what is the number one priority in the City of Lebanon. And that priority is of no surprise for those who understand the finances of the world going on right now, is the 2012 budget. Our second segment will be devoted to our Lebanon airport. In approaching this matter, it gets a little boring. I have a little cheat sheet. I usually don't read on the show, but I want to refer to it because I want to just accurately share with you. This is the idea of being transparent, to let each citizen know here in Lebanon, all 13,000 of you, this is the kind of thing we have to figure out together, and we have to learn to find a place where we can live with it. In all things we do in Lebanon, there's two elements in approaching a budget and approaching the whole situation as a city, and the first is the element of resources. There are fixed resources that we have to work with in providing the kind of services that you as citizens feel that we should have, that you think that is something you really want the city to do. And I guess the judgment is you want it to be affordable, those resources. So whatever resources we have, mostly all comes from property tax. The way the state of New Hampshire is set up, unlike other states, it's very much almost, I'll exaggerate, but I could almost say it's like 100% based on property tax. Actually, there's other sources, but the property tax that's paid is the essential, and it's about over 70% of the resource the city has to work with comes from property tax. Well, that's a really putting all your eggs in one basket kind of approach to matters, and it has strengths and it has weaknesses. And over the time we have our shows, we'll probably talk about some of those as we go down the road. The other half of this equation that you face in a community and in budgeting is requirements. There's the requirements made of the city of Lebanon. Some of those requirements are imposed from the federal level. Some of those requirements are imposed by the state level. After all, in New Hampshire, cities are driven by the state government. The state government, unlike other places where there's home rule and maybe cities have more autonomy, here in New Hampshire, it's very much cities are creatures of the state. And so you have to follow all those state rules, limitations, guidelines. They set the boundaries. They set your resources. So we are a creature of the state. We are a creature of requirements. There are other requirements imposed on the city of Lebanon for a whole variety of sources. And one of the things we'll talk about in the budget is the CSO projects. These are the separation of sewer and water, stormwater and sewer water, that are mandated by the state to protect the federal government for the reason that they are to protect the waters, but they're extremely costly, and you'll see that as we discuss the budget over the next shows ahead about that situation. So what you have is you have to have a balance of resources that you can live with as citizens and requirements that we must comply with and that you require of us. There's some discretionary requirements that could be changed by you as citizens. You might decide there are some services that you think the city shouldn't do, or that's not just unaffordable from your behalf. Right now, the scenes in the terms of budgeting in New Hampshire is pretty scattered. It's certainly not all pointing in the right direction. Our organization is being demanded to do many different things of a variety of nature, and they don't all align in the right way. I mentioned before we're doing the master plan, trying to create a master plan product, and I will bring occasionally some diagrams to the show, and these are just diagrams that I like to share to kind of illustrate my perspective as a city manager, because it's the perspective that I think you each have maybe better perspectives at different points, but I have this kind of unique sitting in the middle and watching it all flow out. And in this perspective, one of the diagrams I use is this diagram here. And this diagram is, you see the big arrow? I think we're all striving to go in the same direction of the big arrow. Unfortunately, within that big arrow, there's all kinds of arrows of all colors and variation, all of them pointed in multiple directions, and none of them in parallel to a chosen path. Now, that's a recipe in a community for not moving forward in an expeditious, efficient, and effective way, to have that many arrows pointing in different directions. And what I'm going to be striving for as your city manager is to work with you and work with others here in the community and reach a point where our arrows will be looking like this. And what you notice in this diagram is that all the arrows are still a different color. There is distance between them, but they're all pointed in the same direction. That's what I call unity. And the whole purpose of city management is to build unification. Unification within the organization by the employees that live in the organization and work in the organization, and unification with the community, the private, the for-profit sector, the private for nonprofit sector, to work in unity with partners. Now, partners can come from all these different sectors, and it's important to collaborate. Collaborate means joining together, reaching a point of being able to have consensus, to live with solutions that are balanced, compromises, consensus built, that we can live with the certain directions that we can unify behind. And they're also a product of building these partnerships. Formerly, before being a manager, I was an attorney, and I often would represent clients who would be forming partnerships. And we would talk about the aspects of building partnerships, which is sharing your talents, sharing your strengths, shoring up each other's weaknesses, helping each other with resources to where it would be most efficient to produce outcomes that could be shared outcomes in furtherance of the partnerships. These partnerships can be on all different types of levels, with other municipalities, with the state, with the federal, with the private sector, with some of our leading corporations in the community, with the nonprofit sector. So all that comes back to the budget. Is how do we find a way to balance the resources available to us and the requirements of us? In the documents that we'll be talking about over the next several months on this show in terms of budgeting, we kind of start out with the first premise, is that there's seasons to a budget. And the season that is upon us at this point is we've done some preliminary review. And we had a work session at the city council level in which we shared outcomes and actions that the city's departments are proposing to achieve in 2012. And we shared a financial analysis that I'll provide some highlights today, but there's so many highlights that we'll continue to provide them over the coming months here. There's some factors in this, and one, of course, I think is uncertainty. Uncertainty is based on what is the economy going to be like? What is the cost of living indexes that would be most accurate in kind of judging where we have to be? Another factor is the downshifting of costs from the state of New Hampshire. In Concord, there has been quite a significant amount of downshifting of costs to cities and other local jurisdictions. And in the downshifting, what it means is that the responsibility for providing and meeting the requirements are not eliminated. They're kept, but the resources you have available for meeting the requirements are shifted so that it's down to the city. And as I mentioned earlier, that means it's based on a really sole providing resource system, which is the property tax system. And the property tax system is set up to be a steady, kind of a chug engine that moves along the track. However, it's not meant to be a balancing type of endeavor. There's too much variance in terms of the outcomes on persons and their property. It can cut a whole lot of different ways. I was meeting with some people from Hardy Hill the other day, and they were commenting how the shifts toward their properties were occurring. The nature of the property tax system is based on your valuation, your assessment of the property, and how much resources are going to be taxed against your property that the city deems it needs. So a lot of that business of what your tax bill is like is based on the budget, really, on what services you're willing to purchase and at what costs you're willing to pay. And then coupled with the requirements we must do these things. Our mandated costs are the other big factor. The mandated costs on the separation projects I mentioned earlier that are really, really driving it. And over a period of time, they may reach as much as $50 million. And all that has to be bonded, so the bonding has to be paid each year. So the other one I mentioned earlier was the uncertainty created by the downshifting. And all that, that the picture of the downshift from the state is not yet disclosed. As we move down the line on this, we've done some projections. And the projections are that if we kept the present footprint of the City of Lebanon's operations and all the services we provided with the resources we have and the requirements we live under as a community, it would mean a property tax increase between 4.2 and 5.6% increase. And many people have expressed that that's not acceptable. That the times are more rugged, that the cost of living increases that they're experiencing, that they see, that their demands on their limited dollars are such that we should be a balanced budget as we are required to be, but it shouldn't be it should be balanced closer to the 0% tax increase. Now, there's a paradox there because I think many of us in the community value the services we are providing. What is the dollars being used for? Well, they're being used over 70% of them, close to 74% for personnel costs. That's 172 positions in the city, and of those, about 120 of them are union positions, since the city is a unionized workplace. So principally we're talking about persons helping you every day. And most of those persons that are helping you every day are in the police department, in the fire department, in the public works department. That's where the heart of the resources are being placed. We have other services that aren't as high cost in terms of HR, human resources, the library, the recreation, the human services delivery they have for people that are the most vulnerable. And it's really, they're very narrow in terms of the number of persons that there is not much adjustments you can make in this. So are there answers to this? I think we're going to work on these answers. At this stage, the city has decided that they're going to allow me as the new city manager to work hard with the other departments on every item we have. And we're going to work with the departments. They're going to file on August 15th their budgets based on the conditions I've described. I will work with them from August 15th to October 1st. And from that point on, we'll be dialoguing with our city council and with you and our citizens. So bear in mind, something's got to give. And the quality of life here is awfully high. And how much do you think it would be diminished if we changed the footprint of the city government? These are big questions, and we look forward to visiting with you as we go down the line. If any of you wish to make comments, remember to use the Leb Connection. That's on the website, Leb Community Connection. With that, I look forward to hearing from you and learning more about your thoughts about the budget. Welcome to our second part of our show today, and I have Rick Dyment here, our airport manager, and I want to thank Rick for joining us today. I've always asked all the department heads when they come on the show, which you're kind enough to do, to kind of tell a little bit about yourself for the community so they can maybe know a little bit about your background.
Okay. My life's been a history of accidents, I guess. I was working with my dad as a builder, and he was asked to build a camp for people up in northern Maine on an island. And the brother-in-law of this guy talked about weights of gasoline and water and all such things. He stayed there for about a week, then he left, and the guy we were building the house for said, "Do you know what George does?" And I said, "Yeah, he's a mechanic or something for an airline, I'm not sure." He said, "No, he's president of American Airlines. Give him a call if you want a job." So 3 years later, I graduated high school in '72 and gave him a call. Got a job working at LaGuardia Airport. And by the time I got the job, he was CEO of American. And then that was the Arab oil embargo, and he gave some money improperly to President Nixon, and he got asked to leave. So my angel left, and I got laid off with everybody else in the Arab oil embargo. Got the aviation bug. I said, well, I want to fly. I took lessons, 6.5 hours, and medically knew I couldn't fly commercially, so I gave that up. And went to college and said, I want to be an air traffic controller. Went through the college, went through the school down FAA Aeronautical Center down in Oklahoma City, and of 16 people, I was the one that failed.
Oh, no, no.
Came back home and worked for Dad in the building business, and then worked for Precision Airlines, a small airline, very close to Cape Air in Concord and Manchester. And that lasted for about 6 months. Got married, worked up here in the Hanover Hardware store, which used to be on Main Street, and saw an ad for an airport planner, and I did that for about 29.5 years.
An airport planner, what's an airport planner?
Airport planner, you follow criteria, you follow the needs of the airport. If you figure out what the airport needs, what's going to happen to the airport in 20 years, what do you do to meet that demand up until 20 years? Then you do an environmental work to see whether what you said was real, and then you do a financial work to see if you can pay for it. And that's basically the same with all of the airport planning. Did it all across the country, 3 different firms. Left.
You had to travel a lot?
A little, not as much as I would have liked. Did Las Vegas and Boston and Mississippi, Florida, some different places. Worked with one firm up in Maine. We worked there 3.5 years, moved back to New Hampshire. I'm a native New Hampshireite. Worked for a firm here for 15 years, worked in Boston for 8 years, commuting from New Hampshire. Got laid off there, worked in Concord for 2 years, got laid off there, and ended up here in Lebanon.
Well, we're glad to have you here. You know, that it shows, you know, when I talk to students and youth, I always say, you know, one of the important things is that you stretch, you reach, you never stop trying. You try different things. People go through 5 or 6 different career opportunities, moves, and the important thing is that striving, never stopping, and that kind of illustrates what you've been about.